Oh, let's see, Andres. Happy Halloween, October 31st, 2024. Yesterday we had our conversation on more conversation panelist style of secure access, and today, of course, we've got Justin and David back to give the actual live demo of it. One thing I forgot to do yesterday was kind of actually do introductions. So, Justin and David, I'll kick it to you guys just for a quick intro, just so everybody knows who's doing the talking here and the presenting of the secure access live demo. So, Justin, I'll kick it over to you first.
Sure. I'm Justin Murphy. I'm a technical marketing engineer. So I work with sales, product management, and engineers to build and design and enable sales to be able to show off what we're building on our secure access platform.
That's awesome. And David.
I'm David. I'm also an engineer at Cisco. I support different things every other day, it feels like, but one of them has consistently been SSE solutions. And I'm enthusiastic about learning and information security. So
Excellent, excellent. And people may not recognize you, David, from last year's episode when you did have the full fancy mustache and everything going. So it is the same David Keller, everybody, just so we all know. And Justin, you still got the werewolf stuff going on. That looks good.
I do, yeah.
Perfect for Halloween.
That's right.
Now, classic to the Security in 45 show. We'll keep this to 45 minutes. And Andres, anything before we get started?
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of people that's super excited to see secure access in action. I know since the last month we've added a few new things into secure access that are make it easy to demonstrate and show the value. So it's pretty cool. I'm very excited. I know, like any other episode that we do, Mike, we learn something new, and this is not going to be an exception. So without further ado, unless you guys have anything else, Justin, show is yours.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I'll start off, though, with a quick overview of secure access. I thought about a slide, but we're not going to do any slides because we're doing demos. But basically, if you're not familiar, if you haven't seen a lot of the pitch around secure access, it is our secure services edge platform that provides functionality for secure internet access. So we've got proxies and firewalls and IPS and DLP functionality for going out to the internet, and we've built in secure private access over VPN, client-based ZTA, and clientless ZTA to your SaaS apps, public cloud apps in public cloud, or apps in your data center. We're going to explore some of the connectivity between all of these things, the security controls that you can provide, the posture, and what it is, what it's like to be an admin, as well as what it's like to be an end user in this environment as well. So we're going to get started, though, in experience insights. So basically, we're starting at the end where I've got everything deployed, and I'm looking at my users and how they're experiencing access to different apps. And it's pretty exciting to kind of show this, because this is something that a lot of times you're blind to, especially when you have hybrid workers and folks that aren't on your network, right? So when I log in and I go into the experience insights main page or overview page, I can see how many users I have online. I can see some basic health information, right, and who's logged into what machines with like latency, jitter, and loss. And this is specifically to our VPN headends today. That could change in the future, and we would like it to be sort of customizable as well. But today it's all to the VPN headends. And then you're going to also see some basic information about the device itself. I can click in here actually, and actually I'm going to click into Kara, I believe, and I can get additional information about Kara, right? So it all kind of expands out into a much greater detail with her public IP address, her specific version of Windows, when she enrolled, how long she's going to be going to need. How long before her certificate from ZTA enrollment, so for her client base. So now I know that she's using client-based ZTA, what module version she's using, and even when the certificate was issued and her location, right? So I've got a ton of information right at the top, and then I can scroll down and even understand sort of what rules she's hitting over the last 24 hours up to the last month, and how many times she's being blocked and how many hits per rule. So once we've configured these rules, I can dig in really deep very quickly on one specific user if they're having any issues. If she's saying, hey, I can't get to this application or something's happening, there may be one of these rules that she's hitting. Like I might see a bunch of traffic to this for all private access being blocked. So chances are she's trying to get to an application that she's not allowed to, and it's happening either automated or she's trying a lot, right? So I can dig into that pretty quickly. I can even get her posture information. So this is supplied by the dual posture agent that's just automatically installed with the ZTA module. I understand that she's not running disk encryption right away. This is because it's a VM. You can't really run disk encryption in our VM environment. So, but that's not something we're requiring either. So it's not a big deal, but at least I know that's what's going on, right? And then I can continue to scroll down and see a little bit more detail about her machine with the CPU utilization, memory, Ethernet speed. If there was anything in here that was being overutilized, then I would be able to say, hey, you've got a CPU spike or memory utilization is high. And we even give suggestions on what to do when that happens. And this is still the same test out to our VPN head ends, but you'll see the specific IP address that she's hitting. And then we can give you more information, like if she's been on WebEx calls in this case, about her experience on WebEx. So she may be experiencing some latency here. There may have been a drop, or I don't think she was on WebEx at that time, but you can see that we've got some statistics here across. If she's saying, hey, I can't share my screen, or when I turn video on, things are breaking, we can start seeing what might be happening on those video conferencing calls as well. But we can dig a lot deeper today using our endpoint tests. So if I go from sort of just looking at what's baked in, what we've been seeing for the last year or so from Experience Insights, I can go into specific endpoint tests, and I can say, okay, well, that's all good and fine. It looks like she's okay, but let's go look and make sure that she can get to this corporate app that's configured here. And we can configure network and HTTP tests. And this is all going to run over VPN or straight out to the internet in most cases. So I can see that how she's connected. I have a little bit more information about her gateway, that she is connected to VPN, and the specific IP address of the application I've configured, right? I get, again, detailed information about the host, how she's connected, what her gateway response time is, what her information about her VPN, how much loss and what the score we're giving her on that. And then I can dig into how many hops there are going through. And in some cases it's a lot, but in this case it's very few. And then I can even see the specific information about that application. Now, we can dig into a couple more, but if I wanted to get more information just about this specific test or other tests that I'm running, you can pivot into the Thousand Eyes dashboard, right? And that gives you a deeper look into some of the tests. Here I've pulled up the HTTP test to box, I believe. I think we're calling it cloud, SAS storage right up here. And we can see that everything's successful in every phase, like the DNS lookup's good, connect is good, SSL, send, receive, HTTP, all of it loads fine. I can see which endpoints are running that tests and what response they're getting specifically. And then I can even see some of the network information. So this is where we're going to really build out that map of how our users are accessing that application and where they might be experiencing latency, jitter, loss, or any sort of network connectivity issues. And you can see there's a couple different paths here. One user is connecting via VPN, the other is going straight out to the internet. And you can see that there's a few different paths going through Cisco systems to get to Box, right, out in Cloudflare. We can even see where they're connecting from, and then again, some basic information about those users. And we can do that for both SaaS apps as well as internal apps. Again, if we go to that corporate app, we can see that, hey, there is somebody having issues getting that app, but that could just be because they're not connected to VPN. If I look at, if I go back here and look at the map, I can see that that the person who's having issues is right over here in Wichita, Kansas. And yeah, I know that they're not connected to VPN, but you could dig in and find that out for yourself as well. And we have the basic information here about each of those devices, and again, the path that they're taking to get to that application.
Justin, I just can't help but think, like, going back to my troubleshooting days on the VPN team in TAC, how much I would have loved to have had something like this. Like, just knowing, is it a VPN thing?
Right.
Is it just an application thing? Is it your default gateway, your wireless signal? I saw even like the memory utilization of the local client was being looked at. So when I see this, I think about a lot of time savings when I'm the person that is responsible for figuring out where the issue is in the network, or if it even is a network issue.
Absolutely, and there's so much information in here. It's hard to do it all justice in a demo, but we're getting that information over time. And I was a network admin as well, where mean time to innocence was very important, right? Everything was either a DNS problem or a network problem.
Yep.
And you had to figure out every step along the way to prove innocence and really to help direct folks to where to go to actually find the resolution that they need, right? So it's really about not wasting time looking at all of the different pieces individually and knowing, okay, this is where the issue is. So we need to go talk to the application team. We need to go talk to the firewall team. We need to go talk to whichever team, or if it's a network problem, let's fix that as well.
And with a tool like this, you could have maybe someone who's not as deep on how networking works, so they don't need to understand the process behind this and how all the connectivity and all the pipes are set up, and they can just look at a screen like this and say, I can tell you right here and there maybe which team we need to engage as we look to resolving a connectivity or a latency issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we're going to continue to expand this out. There are going to be changes happening over the next few days, and then definitely in the coming months, where we can give you more information about the end user device, more information about the app health, and what we're seeing from a secure access standpoint. Like I said, some tests that are static now, you may be able to change in the future. So there's a lot to come, and there's a lot of good information that you can get out of these. And while I can manage 3 users pretty easily on my own in this dashboard, we're working on adding some AI intelligence once we start getting all that information in, to be able to narrow it down. So if you have thousands of users and everything, right, you can start getting pinpointed down to, hey, these users in this location or these particular types of connections are failing, right? So that you can drill down into that without having to sort of scroll through and start searching and finding it on your own. And it's all about time to resolution when you're talking about experience insights and reducing that.
It's great.
So that's the end result of sort of setting up secure access and having all the tools in place and getting your users access to their applications and really to internet resources as well. I think we're going to focus mostly on access to private apps today and the components that go into that. But just know that secure internet access is there, and we can, if we have time, show some like DLP activities or activities of blocking destinations or monitoring and that kind of stuff. But where I'll go next is sort of how do we get the plumbing set up to make app access available to users, and we do that. Actually, let me back up. So we can do that through network connections, but really, and start configuring that. But really, if I'm starting from scratch, we have a handy workflow that will help guide a administrator through some of the basic setup steps, right? So let's talk about that for just a minute. We really want to help administrators understand sort of what the basic components that are needed for access to their private apps. So basically, when you start out, we help you out by pointing out, hey, you need to configure network tunnel groups. We need an IDP and a SAML solution set up. And actually, we'll dig into network tunnel groups in a minute, but I'll go ahead and pivot into the users and groups here, because this is somewhere that it's IDPs are, I don't know, I find them interesting in SAML and authentication and all the different methods that we're using for MFA and all that is something that I like to dig into. But one of the things that we've done here is we've simplified it down, but also just this week, we've made available the ability to integrate with multiple directories, right? So I'm already added in a CSV and I have Active Directory set up, but now I can integrate with additional directories, and I can integrate with as many Azure, Okta, or anything that supports SCIM directories. I can integrate with Active Directory, and I can integrate with Google Workspace, right? So I have a plethora of options for my enterprise. So if I have 5 IDPs or whatever the case may be, and honestly, talking to customers most recently, we've been asking that question: how many identity providers do you have? And typically it's more than one.
Yes.
Somewhere it's usually between 3 and 5. Over 5, and we ask them why they like pain. But that's where you end up in a lot of these organizations, whether it's because it's a hospital, it's public sector, and there are just different types of users or contractors and things like that. So they'll have multiple there. And what happens is when you configure those different directories, you get to pick, when you configure your SAML setup, you get to pick which one of those IDPs gets assigned to this SAML solution. So we'll dynamically pick, when the user types in their username, which SAML solution based on your selection here.
Hey, quick question, Justin. That SAML, the SAML solution, goes tied to only one of the directories, or it could tie to multiple IDPs at the same time?
It would be a one-to-one mapping.
Cool.
Let's see if I can get that to go away. Yeah, it would be a one-to-one mapping, and you can see I've got here my SAML configuration set up. It looks like I need to update my gateway or my entity ID there, but I have this integrated with Duo, but you can integrate with any SAML solution you want. I've integrated with Duo, Azure, Okta, but there are many others that you just plug in and work.
And on the Experience Insights tab you're on before, when you had that user we were looking at, so that's just one of the users from the IDP, and that we have visibility on that user, not just their IP address, I'm assuming.
Exactly. So all of the users. So one of the things that we do that is unique to some solutions is that we sync the directory with the users and the groups, so that you can use those ahead of time in policy, so that you can select them and know that you're not fat fingering them or mistyping those usernames or groups when you're writing policy, right? They just exist within the platform, and you can select them for policy, and we can even see how many users are in there, if it's associated with any rules, and we can get some quick information about those users and groups, even just from the users and groups page.
Cool.
If I go back to workflows, we'll spend about a couple more minutes in here. You can see we go ahead and show you how to, and we'll dig into this a little bit later. But you need to assign private resources. You need to configure your default rules and global settings, or at least be aware of them, even if you don't want to configure them. Understand what the posture profiles are going to be that are going to be applied to these rules by default if you don't customize them, and some of those settings, right? And then you need to set up a rule to be able to access private apps, because one of the concepts of Zero Trust is that, hey, you're blocked by default, we have to allow you by exception. And so that's where you need to configure a rule to get to this first application when you start running through and testing this. And then finally, at the end, we make sure we cover the end user connectivity. So everything up to this point was getting that plumbing in place, right? Whether it's the network tunnel group, the resource connector, the IDP, SAML solution, all of these all of those are about the infrastructure to get to the point to where you can start getting users connected. And so if we go into this final step, basically it's going to walk you through setting up your DNS server. DNS servers are sort of, with being from OpenDNS and Umbrella and understanding that that's sort of the foundation of the internet, this is the foundation of your user access as well. So we need to know what DNS servers are going to be used for our VPN solution, for our ZTA solution, for our app resolution, all of the pieces that we've configured. We need to know where to go to configure that. So that's one of the first things you have to do before you can even configure a VPN profile, before you can get those private resources set up and things like that. So we've got one set up here. Now we can go to our zero trust configuration. Here we actually have no configuration for the most part. We just tell you how we're steering things and what private resources are assigned. This is actually auto-populated from the app definition. You can put domains and IP addresses in here if you do want to steer them through there through ZTA, but really what you're doing is black holing, because if you don't have an app definition and you don't have a rule set up for allowing that app access to that application, there's nowhere for them to go. From a VPN profile, so next we can configure VPN profiles. We've got 3 here, but all of this is sort of pre-set up from having the, so that you don't have to sort of plumb everything in. Basically, that's all you have to do is set up IP addressing for each of your regions, and we're global, right? We talked yesterday about just standing up some new edge DCs to add to these regions. They haven't quite been added into production, but we are using them. We're moving internal orgs to them today, and we'll continue to expand that capability. But we are sort of globally available, and you can configure these VPNs for wherever your users are. And really that's to get them into our system so that we can route them as quickly as possible through our peering relationships to the applications that they need. So if you have users in Switzerland that need to get to applications in US Virginia, then you may have the VPN set up for Switzerland and the and your IPsec tunnels or resource connectors connected up to US Virginia, so that they can so that then we can provide the backhaul to get to them. Our VPN profiles, we're not going to dig into them today, but they are very feature complete compared to what we do with ASAs, as far as like always on VPN, cert based auth, radius auth. If you want to use ICE, you can even see this user account is using ICE. And one of our tests was to the ICE server to make sure that, hey, once you're on VPN, can you even hit that? Because the device needs to be able to talk to ICE for authorization and other tasks as well that we can integrate with within Secure Access. So, and the VPN solution. So there's a lot of options in here, but I won't drain that today unless there's anything specific, Mike, you think I should talk about.
So this is primarily, if someone's familiar with AnyConnect, we're
Yep.
all they would set all that up, and then we talk about the VPN as a service. So that's what this section is here.
Exactly. So I didn't have to plug in any wires. I don't have to manage hardware. I just configure my profiles. I set up my IP ranges, and then I get an FQDN that's already provided for me inside the XML that is a global FQDN. If I want to see my regional FQDNs or even make customized XMLs, I can do that if I have multiple regions. So maybe I want my US based users to connect to a VPN profile that always connects to US based VPNs, right? No matter where they are. Because I'd rather they get their local or the US Google and resources in the US than resources from around the world, or maybe I do want them to connect, like I said, around the world, so that they have a quicker experience to private applications and don't have to go to that backhaul to get to us.
I also think it's important, and I think a lot of people are unaware that, we hear about this move to a clientless solution, like a clientless VPN or a zero trust only access, but not everything does work as you would assume it would without a VPN all the time. So I like that this is like the fallback option if you want it to be for maybe something, a zero trust application that actually under the hood does rely on IP connectivity, which, the VPN will give you.
Yeah, so things like control traffic that coming from SQL isn't going to work well with ZTA, to your point. Things like FTP does have control traffic as well. Anything that has server to client traffic that isn't initiated from the client. And then there are some applications that just are used to having that that connectivity that don't work well over ZTA because it's going to be client to client. So both of them are acting as both client and server as well, right? Whether it's VoIP or something like that, right?
But it's all frictionless too. Like from the user perspective with this solution, I'm not aware necessarily that the VPN was used to carry my traffic. Like you said, the plumbing's already set up and the user kind of is abstracted from that.
Yeah, when we look at our end users, we can kind of look at that as well. We'll go from here to kind of looking at how you define a resource and then a policy, and then we'll get back into some end user and some actual tests and kind of explore why you would use ZTA over VPN from a security standpoint, but also from a resiliency standpoint. So there are a lot of pieces I can configure under resources. I do have my private resources here. The other one, actually, that's all I'll point out here for now. And we'll just go over to private resources, and we can see that I have a bunch defined here. We'll look at a couple of them. You can see I have a bunch of different connection methods configured for each one. Some of them are only browser-based. Some of them are browser and client-based ZTA. We'll explore how all those are, and then some of them are VPN or all three. So if we go to the one that I find for this demonstration, you can see that it's that I named it security in 45. It actually is going to a separate lab that I have with a separate FQDN. Behind the scenes, it's actually the same IP address as intranet.d1.pseudocode.org, if you're familiar with the sales demo that we're running through here. And you can see that it's using the same DNS server IP even, but that's because that's all local to the resource connector, which is what I deployed for this access. Which I now remember we need to go look at real quick. But we've got zero trust. I've configured it for zero trust connections only, but I configured it so that we can do both clientless and client-based ZTA, and we can see what that looks like. The benefit of clientless is that, hey, I don't have to have a client. It's in the name. And also this app is exposed over HTTP, but when I put it behind secure access this way, it becomes HTTPS from the client to our proxy. And then the proxy is tunneled through all the way to that resource connector encrypted. And then it really only comes out in HTTP in the wherever that app lives.
So I can have my native HTTP apps, but I basically am securing the user to the cloud to reach that resource through HTTPS.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
Pretty awesome.
And you can see right here in the definition, I can go ahead and assign it to a resource connector group, which I have. And then I can also set it. I already had rules in place for apps that all my employees could access, and I'm using private resource groups, so I just assigned it to that group. So really, once I had my basic structure of resource connector and some rules written, that's all I had to do was put it in the right buckets, and it's good to go. I can see that it is part of the all employees apps, that it's going to be all 80 groups, that and that the destination is all employee apps, which is what I assigned it to, that's probably the rule it's going to hit, because there's only 2 rules when I'm accessing that I could possibly hit. Oops. All right. So let's cancel that. And just real quick, we'll look at the same thing, but it's defined for both and not set up for resource connector group. So really the only differences here is that I've checked the box for VPN connection, and I don't have it assigned to a resource connector group, but it's still part of the same group, and that's it. So if you want to move things around, it's very simple to just kind of plug them in where they need to. If they were going over IPsec before, now they need to go over resource connector group, just move them over, right? And it's all in this easy definition. And so while we're talking about resource connectors, if I go to network connections, I can look at my network connection, or my resource connector groups, and I can see I have my security in 45. If I click into that, I can see that it's deployed in ESXi. I can see that I have a single connector. It's synced and connected. I can see its origin IP address and CPU load. There's not a ton of stuff that I need to see here. I can disable, delete, or revoke the connector if I want to. Disable if I want to keep it, but not delete it. If I want to delete it and completely remove it, but let it check back in, I can do that. If I revoke the connector, then it's deleted and can no longer check in. The key is no longer valid on that from that device.
And for the connector, it's just a virtual machine that you'd be able to deploy in AWS, ESXi, and is it Azure now as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
we can,
because it's just a virtual machine, right? You don't have to change the firewall policies to allow access, as long as you have an outbound, you're able to connect outbound using web ports, because it's going to build a tunnel to secure access using either DTLS or TLS. DTLS preferred for performance reasons. And then you don't typically have to change any networking on your network side, because it can get, IP address and DNS configured via, DHCP. And as long as it can resolve that private resource, it's going to be able to communicate with the resource on behalf of you, and with secure access, building that tunnel and, securing the connection. So
Absolutely.
It can be a much lower lift than deploying the tunnel. And you can use that for both the client-based and the client list ZTNA options.
So just to make sure everyone's clear, so if I've got a physical location with a private application there, and I want users to be able to access that application, and I want this to be part of secure access. So it sounds like I have 2 options. One, build an IPsec tunnel off that location into secure access, or just use this resource connector that would not need an IPsec network tunnel. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can deploy either one connector, you can deploy a group of them. Secure access will handle the load balancing for you for that. And it will provide the backhaul connectivity, and you don't have to change your firewall or build a tunnel, and just makes it super easy.
Yep. And like I said, I actually deployed this embarrassingly close to this demonstration, and everything in my environment that is the intranet app is almost exactly the same, including IP addressing, DNS servers, everything, as the rest of the environment that's behind the IPsec tunnels. But because it's obfuscated by the resource connector, they have no problem working together. And so it's a very cool technology to use and drop into environments, either for a POV or for acquisitions and things like that, where you may not have the luxury of having a clean IP slate or DNS, or be using the same DNS servers and things like that.
And regardless of what type of edge device you have, Cisco or non-Cisco, this is a nice way to make it work. Yeah,
exactly. Without having, a lot of folks are reticent to add something in or change their BGP routes or accept routes from the cloud. Which, if I go into the tunnels that are built here we do support BGP. We support many different tunnel types, but again, that's a little more complex. You're probably going to involve more teams to be able to get all the information that you need to set up this BGP table and share those routes and understand how that connectivity works, right? Whereas the appliance is self-contained. You can put in a VLAN, wall it off from everything else if your customer wants to, and then just run with it.
Now, I know the answer to this because, I'm David, but for Mike though, what if I have an application, like the same application at more than one location? Like, is that a problem? So if I have an application on my network that's my data center 1, and I've also got like a redundant version of it at data center 2, or maybe I'm using both in prod, kind of, how would the resource connector be able to manage that?
So
would we have two resource connectors, one per location, or how would we do that?
Yeah, so you could have a resource connector group, right, for each location, because they may be even if they're not in different geographic locations, you could do the same thing, but you'd basically have a resource connector group assigned to each one with resource connectors into it. They could have even discrete DNS servers if they're different for each one of those groups. And then you would basically, the difference would be you would need to have a different FQDN, and that's it. Right? So that's all you would need to say is that this is cisco.intranet.ssc.com, and this is duo.intranet.ssc.com. And with those two different FQDNs, the resource connectors will understand those two different app definitions and be able to send them to the correct resource connector that they're assigned to.
That's awesome. And that's a great question there, David, that you brought up. Yes. It's a good point. If I have, and I've been asked this one before, if I have multiple applications at a single location, do I need a resource connector per app? Or like...
No. So if you have a group of applications, whether it's 1, 10, 20, 100, whatever, you can assign them to a single resource connector group. If you do have a lot of traffic, you may want to expand out the number of resource connectors that you deploy. So you may have, but there's really no limit to that either. So we recommend that you deploy at least 2, but you can deploy 16 if you need them, if you need the bandwidth, and that will be intelligently load balanced. And also, if any of them fail, they will be taken out of that load balancing pool as well, automatically, as David was talking about earlier.
Awesome.
Does that answer the question, David?
It does. Yeah, I was thinking 2 for redundancy as well, but that has come up. It's like, if for someone getting into this, how many resource connectors are we talking for my 1,000 apps I have? Theoretically,
it could be 2. Yeah.
Could be 2. Yeah, 2 for redundancy.
Cool. So, and then so we've got a lot of different rules here. We're going to start just with the all employees app, because that's the one that we're actually going to be using. It's one of the simpler ones as well. But really, the whole point is that our policies are simple, right? We choose an action, like what we want to happen, whether it's allow or block in the case of private apps. There's a few more options for secure net access, like isolate and warn, but we'll just stick with allow and block for now. But you can see all of those users are populated here for me to select and go through. I can choose groups from Active Directory. I've got endpoint devices for those that have checked in via roaming clients. I can even set up network tunnel groups. So if I have branch locations that I want to allow access to this, I can do that as well. And then all of my app definitions show up here, so I can either group them and make it easier to add and subtract from these policies, or if they're just individual, private resources that I want to assign, I can also do that here. And I can even see, if I by hovering over quickly and seeing which ones are grayed out, what types of access are permitted to these applications. So if it's just VPN or just branch or ZTA also enabled for them and things like that. And I will get this navigation down. But yeah, I can assign a posture profile because this is ZTA. We said you get a default one, but you can also add more, and then we can also require a reauth. Like if these are applications that are highly sensitive, and we want to make sure you are who you say you are within an hour or so, or whatever time frame that's shorter than a normal reauth would be required, you can go ahead and do that. And that's moving us closer to that sort of continuously like verification and things, and that zero trust of the user. And then as we go through, we can also configure security with IPS and decryption and things like that. And then the final thing that we've added to this recently is that you can do file inspection, so you can start looking for malware within traffic to and from your private apps from your users, as well as block file types. Like if they shouldn't be uploading bin files or zip files or whatever, you can start blocking those as well. All right, so we've looked at all of the plumbing, we've looked at setting up a rule, we've got the end users configured. So let's just go to a user device and access these applications. And I did it ahead of time just to make sure that I had all the domains correct, especially with what's going on from with the resource connector and all the other apps here. But we can show it working live as well. But really, this user is only connected to VPN. So this user isn't using the client-based ZTA. So what he's done is Lee has logged into sudoku via the normal domain as if he was on-prem, and this is resolving here. I really want that to move. We need to figure out how to make that not dynamic. And so what he's really doing here is resolving that. Actually, I can just hit up. That's not going to resolve on this. Sorry, that one. He's resolving that to its actual IP address over VPN to get to it, and that'll become relevant on the next demo where we're doing it over ZTA, and that IP address is going to look completely different. And that's part of the benefit of ZTA, is that obfuscation of the IP address.
So for this first sampling that you're showing here, this is just a user who's on-prem.
On-prem or on VPN accessing the application. Okay. He's accessing that same application over clientless ZTA. So this is actually going through the proxy in Secure Access, and he's using a different URL for that. And then finally, because it's also exposed via clientless ZTA, you can see the difference here is where, hey, this is the TME and not the sudoku web page. But he's able to get to all three of those resources, one over VPN and then two over clientless, all seamlessly, all without really caring about how he's connected. He just needs to know the destination that he needs to get to.
It's a good example of, they say like just open your browser and get to work, and like that's what this is here.
Exactly. And then when we pivot over to Windows 11 machine, Carol's set up a little differently. Carol has everything connected. So what she's doing is she's SSHing over ZTA, right? So she's able to manage her server as she wants. She's logged in to the same resources, but now she's going to the same URL. But if I do that exact same NS lookup here, and I didn't preload it, so this is live.
Drum roll, here we go.
Right?
Glad it's not me.
Bets on whether I type pseudocode correctly. You can see that now I don't have that nice 10 dot address. I have all of these addresses, right? I have an IPv6 address, which I didn't configure in my DNS server. I have a 127, which is typically like a PIPA or it's not used. And then I have a 7 dot. And basically she's using one of these addresses to get to intranet. And you can even see if I use a different application, instead of NS lookup, I use the ping application, now it's a 7.203 address. It's not any one of those three, right? But she's still getting to the same application. Now we don't allow ping through because zero trust, right? But she's getting a completely different resolution. So now if somebody gets access to this machine, or they get try to map out our network, they're really not going to have a clue what's going on.
Right.
And she's doing the same thing. So she's accessing it though through its normal FQDN. And by the way, our custom FQDNs are coming to our clientless solution. So you'll be able to have a vanity one or a custom one for yourself with a CNAME change in the future. But I'm also able to get to the sselabs.org the same way without client list, because I'm on client based and everything's connected in to that single secure access org, and I'm authorized to access it with my enrollment into ZTA. So, and all of this happens without any interference from the VPN, and I can still get to those VPN only apps as well. I know we're running out of time, so Mike, I'll pass it up to you to.
That's cool. The first thing I wanted to point out is that that amount there, is that your monthly salary, or is that how much we're paying you to be on the show?
Yeah, that's just for today.
Okay, all right. And I'm assuming David gets half of that. So.
Oh no, mine's a separate bill, Mike. You'll get that in the middle.
Oh, great, even worse.
And if you're upset with Justin's, it's way worse than Justin's. So,
yeah.
Andres, we got some overtime we're gonna have to put in.
I know.
No, that was great. I thought that was a great overview, Justin, and I really like the workflow. I always forget that we have the workflow. Like, I'm a big component of like having some type of wizard base step me through it as I go, so it's set up correctly and I can do this one piece at a time. So I like the workflow, connecting everything with, getting all the piping going, whether the pipes be coming from an IPsec tunnel from an on-prem, or the resource connector, or multiple ways for my roaming users to come in, whether it be over the VPN or just a clientless experience. But then getting into the security, and very awesome.
Yeah, no, not everybody's as lucky as I am to be in secure access every day. So I know that they don't necessarily know the navigation. So if you can go into that workflow and get those nice green check marks and get some validation, hey, I'm doing things correctly and things are going well as you go through, then that can help you out when you first start getting involved and start understanding how secure access works.
Yeah. There's a
question for you, Justin. So if, as someone who doesn't spend all day in secure access, kind of where could I go as an administrator to figure out what I would need to do, what my options are for configuration? Like, are there any resources made public from Cisco for secure access that I could leverage?
Yeah, so I mean, the first answer is our docs site, which we do have linked from a lot of our pages, right? So we can just click help and it's going to take us to our docs pages, and you can immediately start seeing what's available in configuration, and it'll take you to the relevant articles. But there are dcloud demos that we can do. There's that you can reserve. And do you have resources in mind, David?
And dcloud,
I'm not listening.
I want to point out, it's not just a Cisco internal thing. Like, there's lots of customers that use dcloud as well. So just for anybody listening in, you can use dcloud to jump in environments like this.
Yeah, all of this is actually dcloud. Our dcloud instant demo. I just made it a little bit spicier for this demonstration. But was there anything else, David, that you were thinking of?
Real quick, that doc, was that docs.sse.cisco.com?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, didn't cut you off, David.
No, all good. Yeah, no, it's really the docs page I was thinking of. I know in the future there'll be a knowledge base with, other one-off articles. In the docs, if higher up in the doc, it does have kind of the walkthrough for, do you want to configure secure private access? Here's the things you need to do. And when you first get started in secure access, I think they still have it in the dashboard. On the navigation page, bottom left option for workflows, it'll take you through what you need to do for each section, right? So you don't have to go through and configure, the tunnels, radius, certs. If your primary goal, your objective is to have, zero trust access. You already have remote access VPN. You're not interested in migrating off that right now. All you really would need to do is set up, resource connectors. You could do one, for testing, define the resource, define a DNS server, tie it to that resource connector, and then add users, which would just be syncing, setting up SAML, and, setting a rule that allows access, right? And I don't think there's anything else you really have to do. And you don't have to create the tunnels. You don't have to, set up the internet security. It'll make it streamlined. So like there's a lot of
Absolutely.
functions and there's a lot of things you can do with secure access, but you don't have to do it all at once. And you can very quickly start to get those desirable outcomes, for the things that you actually need, right? That sentence makes any sense.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Yeah, you don't have to boil the ocean. You can do the one thing that you want to do and get that done, and you can get it done very quickly.
I actually want to mention something that we're moving on that direction in a lot of products, and that's what I've seen from, for example, I play a lot with Cisco, and before it was one thing that you needed to do for everybody or not. And now what we're doing is that we're creating those pieces and then putting them together at the end. You don't need to do all the settings. You don't need to do everything that the product has, and then you can do one by one. And if you're hands-on, like we all like to be, if this is the case, it doesn't necessarily need to break anything, right? You can just do a super scoped deployment for one user, two users, and just test it out like that without having to miss any connectivity for anybody.
That's great. Good way to close out the conversation, I think, right there, the message on simplicity. Guys, really been a great session. Justin Murphy, David Keller, thank you so much for joining us again. And we'll get this posted online so everybody can watch the recording as well. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Happy Halloween. And Andres, next month, we're doing a episode on segmentation. So
Yes.
Look forward to that one as well. So I appreciate it, guys. Be safe, stay secure. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks
Have
for
a good
having
one.
us.
Right.
Have a good one.